NASCAR has filed a countersuit against 2311 in Front Row Motorsports. Chase Briscoe has won his appeal, and Cindric is not suspended after Ryburn tied Dillon at Circuit of the Americas. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight those really quickly. First, going to take a look at a ton of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Suarez's 2025 Freeway insurance scheme that we'll see this weekend at Phoenix. Scheme's alright in my opinion. I think Trackhouse nailed the inverse of it because the inverse from the original one. Like the white being in the background, it does look really solid. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is William Byers' 2025 Cincinnati Incorporated scheme that we'll see in 2 races in 2025. Scheme looks really good in my opinion. I'm a little surprised they're not using this one for the Coast 600 because it kind of gives those patriotic vibes, but it does look really good. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Riley Herbst's 2025 Sunny D scheme that we'll see at Las Vegas next weekend. I love the Sunny D look. The colors look really good on it. The orange, the blue, the yellow, all of it looks great. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack next weekend at Las Vegas. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Tanner Gray's 2025 Victoria's Voice Foundation scheme that we'll see next weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. Not the biggest fan of this scheme. I think these colors are a little bit too muted for me, to be honest. It's good to see a company like this working with the team, but I'm not the biggest fan of this one. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Dean Thompson's 2025 Offer 5 scheme that we'll see this weekend at Phoenix. Scheme's okay in my opinion. I'm not the big fan of the yellowish looking number on the car. I think the background color looks good, but the yellowish looking number on the car is not my favorite look on it. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Daniel Dye's 2025 B Pro Auto Parts scheme that we'll see in 4 races in 2025, including this weekend at Phoenix. I think the scheme actually looks decent in my opinion. And I think it's good that the scheme will be on the track at least for a couple races in 2025, including this weekend at Phoenix Raceway. Next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Bubba Wallace's 2025 U.S. Air Force scheme that we'll believe we'll see this weekend at Phoenix. I love this scheme. The colors look absolutely incredible on this one. Kind of gives those old school feels when Bubba had like the Shark Teeth scheme back in 2018. I think it's my favorite 2311 scheme I've seen so far this year. This one looks really awesome and great. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Noah Gragson's 2025 Long John Silver scheme that we'll see this weekend at Phoenix. Scheme is pretty good in my opinion. Pretty interesting that we've got a 4 Long John Silver scheme. I never thought we'd see that to this day, but I think it does look solid. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack this weekend at Phoenix. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Choice Hotels. As it was announced earlier today that Choice Hotels will be returning to Trackhouse Racing to sponsor the organization once again in 2025. They are going to sponsor Daniel Suarez, I believe, for 4 races this year. I believe at the Charlotte Roval, Gateway, and I believe at Marshall in a couple weekends as well. And they've announced that Ross Chastain is also going to be sponsoring them a little bit later in the year as well. So Ross will have 1 race sponsorship with the program in 2025. Choice Hotels has been with Trackhouse Racing, I believe, since 2023, so they joined a couple years ago. I don't think they revealed the car at this point, but pretty awesome to see that Choice Hotels will once again be back working with the team in 2025 as an official sponsor. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rush Truck Centers. As it was announced earlier this evening that Rush Truck Centers has officially added 2 more races to be sponsoring Noah Gragson in 2025. I can't tell exactly which of those 2 races they've added for the year, but Rush Truck Centers originally only had 8 races scheduled to sponsor Noah, and they've sponsored 2 of those races, including this past weekend at Circuit of the Americas. Rush Truck Centers has been really bigly associated with Super Haas Racing, and now they're working closely with Noah Gragson currently at the moment. I would not be surprised or shocked if they do find more sponsorship down the road, and I think in 2026, if Noah Gragson is still around with this program, which I believe he does have a multi-year deal with Front Row Motorsports, if I'm not mistaken, I would not be surprised or shocked if you do see them go ahead and see Rush Truck Center sponsor Noah Gragson for a lot more races in 2026. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Phoenix purse money. So every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, and Truck Series race, Bob Pockus puts out the purse money for the event. And according to Bob for the Cup race, it's $11,055,250. And for the Xfinity race, it's $1,651,939. For the Cup Series, it's the third straight week, or the fourth straight week, I believe we've had over $10 million in the purse for the Cup Series. While for Xfinity, I think it's a little bit down compared to last year's numbers. I think it had like 1.7 million last year. So a little bit less for the Xfinity Series. We don't have as big of a feel for Xfinity compared to 2024. Nonetheless, it's interesting purse money for the weekend. Glad to see Cup continues to get more purse money. Obviously, the teams do get a lot of that payout. And no, the winner of the race does not get the payout, unlike what some people say on social media. That's basically put out through the charter stuff. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Patrick Lindsay. As it was announced earlier this week that Patrick Lindsay has officially been named the new general manager at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, effective immediately. For a really long time, since around 1998 or 1999, I believe Chris Powell had been the general manager, but it was announced at the end of last year that Chris Powell will be retiring after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Las Vegas Motor Speedway, I believe during one of the final races of the year. Patrick Lindsay, who has done a lot of stuff with the PGA Tour in Las Vegas, he will be the one taking over the general manager stuff, which I think is really huge because the PGA Tour is still one of the biggest golfing tournaments and one of the biggest tournaments you still have in the United States currently at the moment. To have someone from that caliber come in and get to work with Las Vegas Motor Speedway to try to grow it, I think is absolutely huge. So I think this is definitely a massive and really, really big deal. I really hope Patrick Lindsay can do a really good job being the one that is the new general manager for Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Indianapolis 500. As it was announced early this morning that the Indianapolis 500 ticket for 2025 has been officially unveiled. And if you take a look at the ticket, Joseph Newgarden, who is going for his third straight Indy 500 win, which no driver has won 3 straight Indy 500s in a row, he is on the front cover of it. Makes a lot of sense. Joseph Newgarden has been really strong in the Indy 500 over the course of the last couple of years and seasons, and we know Joseph Newgarden is a really, really good driver when it comes to racing at Indianapolis. It's going to be really fun to see what the ticket sales are. It sounds like according to Doug Bowles that they're up 10,000 ticket sales compared to last year, which is really, really huge. I think the ticket looks really, really great and pretty cool that Joseph Newgarden, who won it, of course, last year in 2023, will once again be on the ticket for 2025. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dean Kessel. As it was announced earlier this morning that Dean Kessel has officially been named the new Chief Marketing Officer at Legacy Motor Club. Now, that name is going to ring some bells because Dean Kessel used to work at Hendrick Motorsports and was a massive reason why Lowe's ended up joining Hendrick Motorsports at the end of 2001 to sponsor Jimmy Johnson his NASCAR Cup Series debut at Charlotte. And of course, they had a long-term partnership with Lowe's and Jimmy Johnson from the end of 2001 all the way to the end of 2018. Dean is going to be able to help a lot in the marketing side of things. Now, this is another executive hiring. Seems like every 2 to 3 weeks we're talking about executive hirings with Legacy Motor Club. But I do think Dean Kessel, who's probably not going to be writing anything in regards to performance on the track, I think this is a pretty big hiring, all things considered. And I do think that Dean Kessel will be able to help get some of the sponsorship. Even though Family Dollar and Dollar Tree are bringing a lot of money for the year, they've lost some funding. Obviously, of course, there's a lot of talk about Carvana's future currently at the moment. We don't know if they're going to be sponsoring any more of Jimmy Johnson's races after this year, which is why Jimmy might be retiring at the end of the year. But I think Dean Kessel will be able to help on the sponsorship side of things and bringing in new sponsors for the team going forward into the not-so-distant future. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Morgan Freeman. As it was announced earlier today that Morgan Freeman has now been officially named the Grand Marshal for next week's NASCAR Cup Series race for the Pennzoil 400 at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. I believe this will be the first time that Morgan Freeman has done the Grand Marshal and has given the command for a NASCAR Cup Series event. Morgan Freeman, one of the most iconic voices in TV and one of the most iconic movie voices out there. People still reference Morgan Freeman. He's been in a lot of iconic movies. The Batman series from 2005 to 2012. You think about some of the iconic movies he's been part of. And now he's going to get the chance and opportunity to give the command. Honestly, if they wanted to put him on the narration on the PA or do some TV narration, I think that'd be really cool. So I think it'd be awesome to hear Morgan Freeman do narration for NASCAR Cup Series races and do some calls as well on the broadcast. In all honesty, in all seriousness, this is really, really awesome to see and pretty great to see that Morgan Freeman will get the chance and opportunity to give the command for the Pennzoil 400 next weekend at Las Vegas Motor Speedway. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cody McKenzie. As it was announced early this morning that Cody McKenzie has officially become the new crew chief for Blaine Perkins starting this weekend at Phoenix Racer, replacing the former crew chief, I believe, Joey Kirkenhoff, if I remember correctly. That was the guy who's been the crew chief for Blaine Perkins for the first 3 races of the year. Cody McKenzie had been working in Big Machine Racing as an engineer for the team and has helped Big Machine Racing really show a lot of improvement in the NASCAR Cup Series. This also tells me Jordan Anderson Racing is getting more people closely with the Chevy pipeline and more with the RCR pipeline as they look continue to grow. I do find this move to be really strange, though, considering the fact that Blaine Perkins just picked up his first top 10 of the season and honestly had his best run so far of 2025 at Circuit of the Americas. I think Cody McKenzie, though, hopefully can go in there and really help the Jordan Anderson Racing team grow, because if he can share some of those notes that he's been able to provide to Big Machine Racing over the course of the last couple of years, I think that could lead to Cody McKenzie helping the team get a lot better. As Jordan Anderson Racing did struggle a little bit more than they have in recent years, we'll see what Cody McKenzie can do, and we'll see if he can provide a lot of great analysis to the team, and we'll see what he can do as a crew chief as he looks to help Blaine Perkins. I don't think Cody McKenzie's ever been a crew chief before, so I believe this will be the first time that he has been a crew chief in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, if I'm not mistaken. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Wyatt Miller. As it was announced yesterday that Wyatt Miller is expected to make his pavement debut and his late model dirt debut in the next coming weeks, and will be doing some racing on different types of tracks in the coming weeks as well. Wyatt Miller, for those who do not know, is the son of Kelly Earnhardt Miller, who of course is the sister of Dale Jr., and of course is one of the co-owners of Junior Motorsports as well. Wyatt Miller is, I believe, only 13 years old currently at the moment, but a lot of people are very high on this young driver because a lot of people have seen the potential that he does bring. And Wyatt Miller has been winning some stuff. I believe he did win some Tulsa shootout events at the end of last year going into 2025. And he's won a lot of miniature dirt races over the course of the last couple of years. Many are really paving him to be someone that could be successful. And it does sound very likely at this point in the coming years we're going to see him in the Cars Tour. And I think some are saying that he might have a chance and opportunity even down the road to make some starts in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. And I believe Wyatt will turn 14 years old this year. So in 2 years from now, he will be eligible to run full, at least part-time in the Truck Series. But he also could be eligible to run the ARCA West and ARCA East Series full-time as early as, I believe, next year or going into 2027. It's very possible that is going to happen in the next couple of years. This is a fantastic and really great opportunity for him, and I really hope he can do a really, really good job as he does make his pavement debut. We've got to remember he's 13 years old, so it's going to take some time for him to get up to speed and get up to par, but I think Wyatt Miller does have a lot of chances, and I think he's got a really good opportunity here to do very, very well with the teams he's going to be driving for in the next couple of weeks. We'll see what Wyatt Miller can do very, very soon. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Christopher Bell. Now, Peter Strada, who does a lot of really good reporting and is always at the racetrack, he put a very interesting tweet in regards to drivers looking who have won 3 in a row in NASCAR Cup Series history. And Christopher Bell is looking to go 3 in a row in the NASCAR Cup Series. We have not seen a driver go 3 in a row in the NASCAR Cup Series since Kyle Larson did it back in 2021. But he didn't only do it once. He did it twice. And we've only seen one driver do it, I believe, twice in a season in the last 40 years, going back to 1987 when Dale Earnhardt did it twice in the same year. There's a lot of really great legends who've done 3 in a row. Kyle Larson's done it. Kyle Busch, I believe, has done it. I believe, not Martin Truex Jr., but we have seen, of course, Kevin Harvick do it. I believe we've seen other drivers like Mark Martin do it. Dale Sr., of course. Richard Petty, who won 10 in a row. Bobby Allison. I believe Cale Yarborough did 3 in a row. There's a lot of great... Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson, to name a few, have been able to do 3 in a row. But what's so significant about this is the fact that in the next-gen era, no driver has ever won 3 races in a row. For Bell, though, he's going to be very lucky because we're going to a track where Christopher Bell has been very, very successful as he is the defending winner of the spring race at Phoenix Raceway. I think that Christopher Bell has a really strong chance and a really great opportunity to go 3 in a row. I think he's going to be a major factor to win. But Joe Gibbs' cars have been really exceptionally good in the spring race at this track, and Bell was really fast at the flat tracks last year. So I do think that Christopher Bell will have a great chance and opportunity, and he could join a very elite club as he looks to go 3 in a row this weekend at Phoenix Raceway, which would be the first time since Kyle Larson did it back in 2021. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the option tire for Phoenix. So for this weekend's upcoming NASCAR Cup Series event for the Shriners Children 500, there is going to be an option tire available. There's going to be 2 tires you can use. You can use the normal yellow tires, which of course are the harder compacts that don't wear as quickly, or you can use the red tires, which are going to be the softer tires, and those are going to wear a lot quicker, but you're going to be able to get a lot more speed, which could lead to a lot of great passing opportunities and better racing product as a whole. Now, as reported by Bob Pockrass yesterday, there will be 6 harder sets available throughout the race, and there will be only 2 option tire sets that you can use throughout the event. So you're going to have to play your strategy very carefully, and you'll have to choose wisely when you want to use those softer tires. So those teams are probably going to wait till the end of the race or the last run to go ahead and use those softer tires. What NASCAR is hoping is that we see improved racing with the softer compound and the softer tires. They're looking to maybe use that for the championship race. Let's be real and honest with ourselves, the racing at Phoenix has not been that good really in the 20 or 30 years this track has been around, or almost 40 years this track has been around. So I think that if NASCAR is trying to make it better, I think that this is a really good move to bring a softer tire in. And I really hope it can lead to a much better product on the track. Because like I've already mentioned and said, the racing at this track generally is not that good for Cup. Now, the Xfinity Series is pretty solid at times, but then again, the Xfinity Series runs pretty good at every type of track. Look at Texas last year, for example. I do believe that this hopefully will help the racing at Phoenix and make the championship race a little bit better because, and maybe this could lead to Penske losing at some point, even though I think Penske's figured it out regardless of the tires they end up using. But I think using a softer and option tire could lead to a pretty solid and a pretty good race that could end up taking place this weekend. We'll see if it does lead to a great race. But I think the option tire is a really good thing that they are using for this weekend. That's going to definitely be a big storyline throughout the weekend, especially on Saturday. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Burt Myers. Now, earlier this evening, the NASCAR Nostalgia account put out a very interesting tweet on Instagram, basically kind of showing that it looks like Burt Myers has a NASCAR Cup chassis once again with the eye emoji. Now, they basically are kind of making up an educated guess, but they're maybe insinuating that Burt Myers could make some more NASCAR Cup Series starts in 2025. Now, Burt Myers did say after running the Clash that he'd be open to maybe running a race or 2 in the NASCAR Cup Series once again in 2025. One race that was talked about was Martinsville. Now, Martinsville, I believe, is in about a month or so from now, and that's one race he mentioned after getting crashed out of the Clash during, of course, the Last Chance qualifier. I think it'd be really fun to see Burt Myers come back and make another start in the NASCAR Cup Series. I believe that was actually where he made his Truck Series run in 2009 when I believe he drove for one of the smaller organizations and teams. So he does have a little bit of experience at Martinsville, plus I think he's done some modified tour racing at the track as well. It would also be good because you would get to see the number 50 team, the Team Amerivent organization, potentially show up to the track a little bit more because we want to see more competitive cars on the track. And yes, Team Amerivent isn't the fastest organization in the world, but they actually showed a lot of promise and potential at the Cookout Clash as they were really fast and quick. And I think Burt Myers, actually with a little bit more experience, can really help this team grow. They've got a good foundation over there. They showed a lot of promise and showed a lot of potential. And I really do believe that Burt Myers getting more NASCAR Cup starts would be pretty fun to see him do. It would be a short track, so it wouldn't be anything else. With Burt, I believe, being around 50 years of age, he's, of course, not going to carve out a full-time NASCAR career at this point. But I think Burt Myers coming out and making starts in the Cup Series once again would be really, really fun. It was really cool to see people support him at Bowman Gray, and I think it'd be really awesome if there's a chance and opportunity for potentially that Burt Myers maybe, just maybe, can make more starts in the NASCAR Cup Series. Seems like, according to this story on Instagram, it looks like there is definitely a chance of possibility of something like that happening for sure in 2025, maybe at Martinsville, or maybe down the road at another track, like a short track like Bristol as well. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brent Crews. As it was confirmed earlier this afternoon that Brent Crews will be driving the number 18 for Joe Gibbs Racing and ARCA for 9 races in 2025, including the ARCA race later tonight. Brent Crews, for those who do not know, is one of the best prospects we currently see in the lower ranks. He's very much considered a comparison to Connor Zilisch. He's like Toyota's version of Connor Zilisch. He's, of course, had a lot of success in the Trans Am Series and the TA2 Series, where he's won races. He's been very competitive in dirt racing, as I believe he won one of his first ARCA races on a dirt track, that being the Springfield Mile, I believe last year or a couple years ago. And Brent Crews is highly regarded by Toyota, and of course, he'll make some NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series starts with Tricon Garage. I believe his first start is coming up in the next few weeks at Rockingham Speedway. Brent is very, very talented, and I think some of it is going to be very solid, especially this upcoming weekend at Phoenix. He is going to be one of the favorites, because that number 18 car with William Zilisch last year at this track, he completely dominated the event and led a ton of laps in the race as well, and went on to win after the race got called early due to being rain shortened. While Isabel Robusto had one of the fastest cars in the field, it was still won by William Zilisch at the end of the day. I think Brent Crews is no disrespect to William Zilisch, but I think that Brent Crews is overall a better driver than William Zilisch, even though he's only 16, even though he will turn 17 in the coming months. But I believe that Brent Crews has a ton of potential, and I think he's going to do really strong in the 9 races. I saw Lime Rock's on the schedule, which you got to circle that Lime Rock race because he's really good at road course racing. And there's some other races on the schedule where I think he's going to be a major factor in serious contender to definitely go to victory lane and definitely pick up a win. I expect it to be a major factor for sure when we do get out to the Joe Gibbs Racing ARCA events. I think he's got the majority of the race on the schedule for the year, which makes a lot of sense to get him a little more development. I think that Brent Crews will have a very good chance and opportunity, and I think he will be able to go to victory lane a couple times in that race. Of course, at Lime Rock, like I already mentioned, he is going to be the favorite to win. I think he will definitely pick up a couple wins for sure this year. Glad to see he'll get the chance and opportunity to go ahead and work with this team in 2025. Like I said already before, I believe he'll be a major factor and serious contender to definitely go to victory lane this weekend at Phoenix and the other races when he has the JBL scheme and the Mobile One scheme throughout 2025. I think in the next couple years too, he'll likely be in a Tricon truck full-time in the next couple years, and probably also be in the Xfinity Series of Joe Gibbs, and maybe down the road, he'll be in a NASCAR Cup Series car for Joe Gibbs Racing. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Luke Baldwin. As it was announced earlier this afternoon that Luke Baldwin will drive the number 66 for ThorSport Racing in select races in 2025, with his Truck Series debut coming up at Martinsville Speedway. Now, the number of races was not officially announced for Luke for the upcoming season, as of course he'll be running full-time in modifieds in 2025. Now, Luke Baldwin, for those who do not know, is a younger son of Tommy Baldwin Jr., currently is competition director at Rick Ware Racing, and also, of course, owns a team in the Wheel and Modified Tour and the Smart Tour as well, and also a veteran crew chief who won races with drivers like Casey Kane, and also owned a team in the NASCAR Cup Series from about 2009 all the way up to technically 2020, though he really wasn't around from 2017 up until 2019. Luke Baldwin, a lot of people highly regard him as someone who has a lot of potential. Now, Luke Baldwin, I believe, turned 18 at the end of last year, around the middle of last year. So Luke is eligible to run in these events. Now, how many races does he have scheduled? It's unknown, but what this tells me is more than likely Luke Baldwin and Luke Fenhaus are going to be splitting this truck throughout the rest of the years. I believe Luke Fenhaus has 10 more truck races scheduled with the team. So probably for the majority of the rest of the year, you're going to see Luke Baldwin and Luke Fenhaus split the seat, which I think are two very, very talented drivers. I think Luke Fenhaus, honestly, he has a really good chance and opportunity to pick up a win in victory this year with the team. I know ThorSport's been up and down over the course of the last couple of years, but I think Luke showed a lot of promise at Atlanta and was really fast there. And in the other races, he's going to run like some of the bigger ovals. I think he'll definitely be a factor there. And then you think about Luke Baldwin, going to be really good at the short tracks, and he's had some experience, I believe, from running the modifieds at the track. So I think that Luke Baldwin could be up to having a really strong year and a very, very good season. I'm really excited to see what he can do because I genuinely think he's got a fantastic opportunity here, a really, really great shot. And I think getting an opportunity to work with ThorSport Racing, a team that's had people, of course, now like Jake Garcia, Haley Deegan in the past, Ben Rhodes, Ty Majeski, the defending champion Matt Crafton, and even Cup guys like Joe Logano have come down and run with this team and program. I think it's a great opportunity for Luke. I really hope he can do well. And maybe, just maybe, in 2026, he could be full-time with this program. Or maybe, and at least a positive here, Connor Jones isn't in a truck. No offense to Connor Jones, but he's not a good driver, and I don't think he should be back with this program anytime soon. So there's a big positive in this situation. At least we won't have to see Connor Jones drive for the team anymore, which is probably the best thing that could have happened because, in my opinion, he was definitely one of the worst drivers we've seen in a long time. Glad to see, though, Luke Baldwin is getting the chance and opportunity to drive for ThorSport Racing in select NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series events throughout the 2025 NASCAR season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Connor Zilisch. Now, Connor Zilisch made his NASCAR Cup Series debut this past weekend and Circuit of the Americas. And there's been a lot of talk and conversation about Connor Zilisch's future potentially going to the NASCAR Cup Series full-time in 2026 and potentially being a replacement to Daniel Suarez, who many people do expect will not be back with Trackhouse Racing in the 2026 season as a full-time driver. And there's also been questions surrounding whether Connor Zilisch could make some more NASCAR Cup Series starts in 2025. Well, Connor said today, and he said this on Sirius and NASCAR Radio speaking to media, he says he has no other Cup starts currently scheduled for 2025, and he wants to put full focus on being in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and trying to win a championship. However, if Red Bull or someone wants him to run more races, he'd be definitely willing to do it. And he also said that he doesn't want to run a road course, he would like to run an oval more than likely. Let's begin by talking about focusing fully on Xfinity. I think that makes a lot of sense for Connor. As much as it'd be really, really cool for him to make like 10 starts this year in the NASCAR Cup Series, because I think getting that experience in the Cup Series and getting last behind a wheel is very, very important because the Xfinity car is so much different than the Cup car. Plus, he's going to be really strong in most tracks and definitely could be a factor to win the NASCAR Xfinity Series race of how good Junior Motorsports has been. I think getting Cup starts is also not a bad situation either, and I think he probably needs to get a little bit more experience, and I would really hope there's a chance and possibly we could see him make some more Cup starts at some point this year. Now, I will say this, one race that I would not rule out as a possibility is Watkins Glen. He was really good there last year in ARCA, really good in Xfinity. Of course, he dominated and won his debut, and we know he's going to be a major factor when the Glen, even though you're going to have people like Shane Van Gisbergen, who was really good last year in Xfinity as well, and was really the best car outside of Connor Zilisch. I think he'll be a factor to win there for sure. But I want to see Connor make a couple Cup starts because I think the more experience he can get, the better it's going to be. Because I think Red Bull is really going to dictate whether we do see Connor Zilisch make more NASCAR Cup starts. And I think it will happen at some point. And I think going and running an oval instead of a road course, honestly, is not a bad solution either because we know that Connor Zilisch is going to be a major factor at road courses. But the one area he definitely has to improve is the short tracks and all the other stuff. But last year was really good on the ovals too. We forget he finished 4th at Phoenix, and he ran very, very well at Kansas and finished 4th even after nearly spinning out and had like multiple saves throughout the event and still got himself a top 5 finish. Connor has a lot of talent. There's no denying that. There's no question. But I don't want to see Connor jumping up and running like 10 or 15 races. It'd be cool. But I think if he wants to fully focus on Xfinity, he should have the right to do that because that's the series he's competing in full-time currently at the moment. But I do think there's a very good chance and possibility going into next year that he could be one of the few rookies in the Cup Series. Because he may not be the only rookie that's in the Cup Series full-time next year. I think Connor Zilisch is a really, really good driver, and I think that having like a mentorship from someone like a Kyle Busch or someone like that helping out, maybe Carl Edwards comes in and helps some mentors, that'd be really, really cool if that could happen. But I think at the end of the day, I think it's really good to see that he wants to put full focus on a series. He's got to clean up some of the mistakes that he had, of course, from COTA. And I think, like I said, the Red Bull's going to have a really big say on what happens for Connor going into 2025 and what race he runs. I think running ovals would be a really, really good thing to see. So I think Connor has about as much raw speed as Kyle Larson does at a lot of these types of tracks. We're just going to have to wait and see what happens with Connor. But like I already said and mentioned, I think there's a very good chance and possibility that Connor Zilisch may have more Cup starts scheduled with the Trackhouse Racing team with the Red Bull partnership as well later this year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of three major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Joe Gibbs Racing and Chase Briscoe. Now yesterday, Joe Gibbs Racing and Chase Briscoe had their appeal on the penalties they had received after the situation with the spoiler being modified, and they actually have won their appeal against NASCAR. They went to independent appeal panel and they have went ahead and won their appeal. They have received their 100 points back that they had lost, and also James Small's suspension no longer exists, and their fine is no longer there. So what was the appeal for? Well, according to what NASCAR said at Atlanta Motor Speedway when they took their car to the R&D Center, they basically said that there was a spoiler modification on the back of the car. That's why Chase Briscoe and Joe Gibbs Racing have been handed a pretty massive penalty, because NASCAR has been really, really strict in regards to messing with the next-gen parts. However, in this situation, Dave Alpern and many people at Joe Gibbs Racing and outsiders like Bozy Tatarevic, who are not really biased in these situations, had said there was something that they didn't do, and basically was elongation on the back of the car. And the appeals panel actually agreed with the ruling by saying there was elongation on the back of the car, and there was actual tear and wear that happened with these next-gen parts. This is the first time, and this is why this is a big story, is because this is the first time we have seen a team go to the appeals panel after having a next-gen part being modified in a sense, and actually be able to win the appeal. We have seen teams, of course, get penalized massively, like Stewart-Haas Racing multiple different times. We saw them not appeal any of the penalties they had received after getting massive penalties, like when Chase Briscoe got a 120-point penalty. But Brad Keselowski in 2022, he basically argued the same thing that the organization of Joe Gibbs Racing argued back in 2022 when he was penalized, I believe, for a spoiler modification, and they went to the appeals panel and they lost their appeal. Now, Hendrick Motorsports kind of won their appeal a little bit, but they still basically had to double their fine, and they got 100-point penalties reduced to nothing, but they still had massive fines. And then, of course, NASCAR basically went ahead and handed to the drivers, that being Alex Bowman and William Byron, 60-point penalties later for greenhouse issues at Richmond, after Alex Bowman at the time was the points leader at this point. This is really significant for Chase Briscoe because Chase Briscoe was at negative 28 points going into this race, sitting around 35th to 36th in the standings and last in the points. He has jumped up for around 36th to 37th, all the way up to 14th in the standings, and tied for 14th as a matter of fact. For Chase Briscoe, he doesn't have to now all around go for the must win. Now, granted, I think he still has the goal of going out and winning a race before the end of the regular season to make sure he guarantees. And we're going to a track where Chase Briscoe has been very solid and really, really good in the past, as this is a track where he picked up his first career NASCAR Cup Series win in 2022 with the Mahindra colors with Stewart-Haas Racing. I think for Chase Briscoe, this really helps his season and goes from having a disastrous moment at the start of the year and worrying whether the partnership with Joe Gibbs Racing was going to work out. Now we don't have to worry about it, because for Chase Briscoe, he doesn't have to worry about this going forward. Now, I would have to thank the NASCAR, because we've seen them basically display all these next-gen parts that have been modified. I would have to think that NASCAR is going to go ahead and display this part to the teams this weekend when they get out to the track on Saturday, because the Cup drivers don't get out to the track till tomorrow. But I do believe that you're going to see that part displayed for everybody to see, to make sure they see if basically you have a situation like this with the next-gen parts. Make sure you send it to us so we can fix this problem, because this is probably not the first time we've seen something like this come up. And we also saw, of course, Henderson Motorsports' reaction, by the way, to them losing their disqualification when they actually had a really big case. But that's for another time, another interpretation. As for this situation, I think for Chase Briscoe and Joe Gibbs Racing, this is a really big and massive dub for the team and organization. And if there's true wear and tear, like was said, then I think NASCAR got the call right here. And I think that it's not them getting paid off, that being NASCAR. I think there was actual wear and tear in this situation, and they were able to provide a case to show that, yeah, we didn't do anything to the car. We didn't do anything to really modify to basically get an edge. Even though many people thought it was suspicious because Chase Briscoe won the pole for the 500, Joe Gibbs Racing hasn't been that fast as super speedways. But if there's true wear and tear, then there's true wear and tear. This is still a massive deal, though, for Chase Briscoe and Joe Gibbs Racing, and a big win for that team, as now they're going to be able to focus forward. Don't have to worry about any more talking about them basically getting the penalty rescinded until after this weekend at Phoenix. And now they can focus on trying to win, which, again, they have a great chance and opportunity to win the race this weekend at Phoenix Raceway. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Austin Cindric. Now, if you watch the NASCAR Cup Series race at Circuit Americas, we already talked about this on the channel, but on lap 4 of the Cup Series race at COTA, Austin Cindric got forced off the track going into the final corner after Ty Dillon forced him off the track. In retaliation, Austin Cindric would come way across the racetrack 2 lanes and would right rear Ty Dillon down the straightaway at over 100 miles an hour, nearly got clipped by Zane Smith, but was able to continue going. And we were wondering if NASCAR was going to hand out a potential suspension or any big penalties. Now, NASCAR did announce on Wednesday morning that they were going to announce some really big penalties, and they actually did announce a pretty big penalty for Austin Cindric, as Austin Cindric was handed a 50 driver point penalty and also handed a $50,000 fine. However, the big one here is that there's no suspension for Austin Cindric for right rearing down the straightaway. NASCAR's explanation is the fact that because it was at low corner speeds and the mile per hour really made a determining factor to it, plus being at a road course compared to a mile and a half with like Chase Elliott and Bubba Wallace, NASCAR decided to not go ahead and suspend Austin Cindric because of that. Now, Kyle Busch was one of the many people in the industry that actually disagreed because Kyle Busch said intent is intent no matter what, and we think that NASCAR got the wrong call, and they absolutely should have suspended Austin Cindric for intent. And also, Chris Rice talked about over $100,000 in damages on the next-gen car this morning, and many other people were speaking about this in the industry. Now, I've seen a lot of the chatter on social media, some saying that the penalty is way too harsh. I've also seen some people saying that what Austin Cindric did, then he got off light. I'm going to lean to more people saying that he got off light, and I have to agree with Kyle Busch for one big reason and one big reason only. Intent is intent. And I really don't like the fact that NASCAR is trying to use the mile per hour in the type of track as an excuse. Because even though it wasn't as fast as like when Bubba Wallace right reared, I believe it was Kyle Larson down the straightaway at Vegas in 2022, or when 2023 when Chase Elliott right reared Denny Hamlin down the straightaway during the Coca-Cola 600, he still was intent no matter what. He intentionally right reared a driver down the straightaway. And for me, and my opinion on this is, I do think that Austin Cindric absolutely should have been suspended for right rearing him down the straightaway. You shouldn't be getting mad on lap 4 of a race. And I know that not every single incident is going to be the same. What I think NASCAR is looking at, they're probably looking at this incident very similar to what Noah Gragson did in 2022 to Sage Karam. Now, personally, Noah Gragson should have been suspended because it was a 35-point penalty for Noah Gragson. But guess what? Noah Gragson didn't just take out Sage Karam, by the way. He took out 10 other cars. I believe Tyler Reddick got caught up in that wreck. Brandon Brown got caught up in that wreck. People could have been seriously hurt in that situation. And also, he did not hit safer barrier. He hit guardrail. There was no safer barrier where he hit. And what if Zane Smith had clobbered Ty Dillon in that situation? I think that regardless of how fast you're going, you should be suspended for right rearing somebody down the straightaway. I don't honestly understand how NASCAR can look at this situation and look at situations differently. I get incidents can be different, right? And I understand that, but personally, intent is intent. And like I said, if you intentionally right rear somebody down the straightaway, you 100% should be suspended. And I know that NASCAR is probably looking at the playoff stuff with the new playoff rules coming in. And I would have to think that's one pretty big reason why they didn't suspend Austin Cindric as well. Which I got to say this, NASCAR needs to teach these drivers a lesson. I think it should be like a one key rule. You can't have this gray area situation. To me, it should be one size fits all. I think if you intentionally right rear somebody down the straightaway, you should be suspended for it. There's no reason to be doing this kind of stuff on the track, and it looks extremely childish. I'm pretty much on the consistency side of things, regardless of speed, and I've seen some people say that the penalty was way too harsh. No, absolutely not. We had a car that could have gotten destroyed, and NASCAR acting like, oh, a car didn't get destroyed. What if Ty Dillon's car had actually gotten destroyed and it was almost over 100 miles an hour? Because it was over 100 miles an hour, according to what Jeff Gluck had posted from the timing sheets. To me, I think NASCAR absolutely did not get this call wrong. It was the wrong call to not suspend him personally. I'm glad they penalized him. If they did nothing, that would have been an awful call. But I think they got the call wrong in the situation. And to me, like I already said and mentioned, I even mentioned this in the original video when the news came out, I do 100% believe that Austin Cindric should have been suspended for this upcoming week at Phoenix. And hey, we all know that Cindric's got a lot of work to do. He does drop from 14th in the standings down to 35th in the points. He's 41 points below the cutoff line, so he's going to have a lot of work to do to still make it anyways, because I'm not expecting Cindric to be a major factor in a majority race this year. Plus, he lost a couple tracks with great opportunities to get wins, like Gateway, which of course has moved into the playoffs this year. But again, Austin Cindric should know better. As a race car driver, there's no excuse for that kind of stuff. And again, I think NASCAR dropped the ball on this one, and they absolutely made the wrong call. And some are going to disagree with me, and that's fine and understandable, because some are going to defend people no matter what, and they're going to look at situations differently. But here's the thing for me. It should be the same thing happened when Bubba ride Larson. It should be the same thing that happened when Elliott ride Hamlin. I get that they're going a lot more quicker, but it still doesn't matter. Over 100 miles an hour is still a pretty big hit, and there was a lot of damages on the car. Again, like Kyle Busch said, I think a right wrist tap on the car should absolutely result in a suspension, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to go ahead, jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about the 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports versus NASCAR lawsuit. Now, we have not had a lot of updates in regards to the 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports lawsuit against NASCAR until yesterday, when it was announced early in the morning on Wednesday. We did a video covering some of the early details on the channel. It was announced early in the morning that NASCAR had actually filed a countersuit against 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports, as NASCAR basically enacts that they violated Act 1 of the Sherman Act. The Sherman Act being part of the antitrust cases, and they violated Act number 1 of that. Now, according to what was reported by Jeff Gluck, basically NASCAR wants to go ahead and eliminate charters as a whole, it sounds like, and they really don't care for the charter system being there. Now, some of the things they do allege in the court documents is, number one, that Curtis Polk had actually gone to a media personnel, a TV partner, in regards to media negotiations for NASCAR, and was basically trying to court them and basically put them on their side. They also apparently had tried to boycott potential Daytona qualifying races, I believe, in 2024, and also were trying to set up boycotts, and they had boycotted a meeting that was supposed to take place in early April. That meeting had apparently not happened, and they boycotted that entire meeting where all the charter teams were supposed to meet in regards to some of the charter negotiations going on. NASCAR also goes against the charter agreement, and by the way, just one thing to bring up, they use an Essentially Sports article as part of their evidence statement, which Essentially Sports is extreme clickbait, and it's AI generated stuff, so I don't know why they're using Essentially Sports at this particular point. But going back to one of the points I was bringing up about the charter system, NASCAR is not entirely wrong that they were not the ones that originally wanted the charter system. The teams back in 2016, when Rob Coughlin basically was trying to find an exit strategy out of the sport, Rob Coughlin was one of the people that was behind creating the charter system in 2016. And they added the charters because, let's be real and honest, the sports model and the financial model in NASCAR back then wasn't doing well. We were losing a lot of big sponsors due to the 2008 recession, and a lot of these teams were starting to shut down in the mid to late 2010s. Now, NASCAR does say the new charter rules they have, however, are absolutely fair. But NASCAR does say that if they continue, and the teams like 2311 Front Row do continue to persist and continue with the lawsuit going forward, they may go ahead and just remove the charter system altogether as a whole. We heard that from Jenna Fryer in the last couple of weeks. Or they may just go ahead and get rid of the exclusivity rights, where you're not guaranteed a spot in every single event, even if you do have charter at that point. Now, NASCAR continued to call out the teams, basically bringing up Dale Jr. at one point, saying the Junior Motorsports wanted to get in, and the RTA told them no, which, again, I do understand in that sense, but same token, at the same time, Dale Jr. also ain't getting in because it's millions upon millions of dollars, and they try to bring up other evidence about that. Now, basically, Jeffrey Kessler, who, of course, is a lawyer for 2311 and Front Row Motorsports in the lawsuit, basically called this meritless stuff and basically went up against NASCAR and said that we're still focused forward on our lawsuit currently at the moment, and we're focused on winning the lawsuit and changing the sport for the better. Now, NASCAR basically also said that the teams 2311 Front Row are not there to promote and grow the sport, which Denny Hamlin did respond not much after that by saying, come out to Phoenix where I'm here to actually promote and grow the sport. Not even 20 minutes after that post had been posted by Jeff Gluck. Now, looking at the situation, there's a lot of things that need to be digested. Number one, I do think a few points that NASCAR does bring up, in this case about the charter system, they're not entirely wrong about. However, I think NASCAR is filing this countersuit And I think one of the reasons is because they are desperate. They know right now that they are at a losing end in regards to the lawsuit. Ever since we got the new judge, Kenneth Bell, in at the end of last year, and he granted the preliminary injunction without the hearing in the case taking place, they've been on a losing end because Kenneth Bell has called NASCAR and the teams not the teams, but NASCAR a monopolistic organization, and they've called them a monopoly for doing the things that they have been doing. And NASCAR has not been happy about that. They filed appeals. Some of those appeals, of course, have been rejected. And NASCAR, of course, has tried to take the charters away from 2011 in front row because NASCAR said they were getting self-harm, which really wasn't true on their end. They were just having their ego hurt a little bit. But also, 2011 front row were actually suffering harm because they were losing sponsors. Two big sponsors left the organization. Moneyline and Dr. Pepper as of recently for 2311. And Monster Energy, they were considering leaving the organization during the lawsuit. We also saw Love's Travel Stop canceling multiple things. Monster Energy canceled multiple things. They lost some sponsors for both organizations, and they lost some of those big companies they had last year, and some of those other companies went to other teams for the year. I get that they purchased the charters, and I get that the charters are not something that, again, NASCAR really, really wanted. And some people are going to say, yeah, let's go ahead and remove the charter system as a whole. I think some of you really need to understand, well, yes, I am personally not the biggest fan of the charter system. Let me explain something really quickly here. If you remove the charter system altogether as a whole, you're not only going to have just 27 in front row suing NASCAR. You're going to have teams like Richard Childress Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, Joe Gibbs, Rickware Racing, the Haas Factory Team, Trackhouse Racing, RFK. All these teams and organizations are going to sue NASCAR because they paid for the charters and they basically wanted the charters to stick around and they basically signed the agreement. If you just completely pull the rug out of it because 2311 in front row go ahead and win the lawsuit, you're opening up more potential problems for the sport, and I think the sport would be in a lot more trouble, and it would do NASCAR a lot more harm than good. Plus, you would have some teams shut down. You probably would have teams like Rick Ware, who have now stuff in the AHRA and IndyCar currently at the moment. You've got Spire, who's very much invested with Andretti currently at the moment. They may just skip NASCAR and go and do another form of racing. And I don't think NASCAR really wants that. As much as the teams need NASCAR in a sense, NASCAR really needs the teams. Look at 2311, for example. 2311 is one of the most popular organizations in the garage because of Michael Jordan. But one thing I also do want to bring up is the fact that it seems like, and it's pretty clear as day, that NASCAR does not like Curtis Polk. Especially after everything's kind of come out at this point. They're really going after Curtis Polk. They're accusing him of a lot of things, and it's very clear as day that they do not like Curtis Polk, and they really, really hate him. Which, again, I can't blame NASCAR for not liking the guy. But at the same token, same time, I think Curtis Polk and people, Michael Jordan, all the people involved in this lawsuit, are trying to make the sport a better place. NASCAR's financial system is not sustainable currently at the moment right now. Teams are not making a lot of money. They want a little more control of the sport. They wanted permanent charters. That's one thing they were looking at. Now, from what the original argument that kind of came out saying $720 million of annual revenue, that's a lot of money. That's insane money especially. But I think that they want to kind of go to more than franchise mode that we see in the NBA and NFL. And I think Breakheart does bring up a good point here that we don't have a commissioner, which is very, very true. And you would have to have a commissioner that comes in. When I look at this lawsuit, I think NASCAR is trying to find any sort of way to get back on even ground. And I know some people are going to side with NASCAR because they want the charters to go away. But again, like I've already mentioned and said, if you remove the charters altogether as a whole, you're going to have a lot more problems that are going to come the way than you're going to have solutions. So at this particular moment and point, we're just going to have to wait and see how the rest of this lawsuit ends up playing out, because I think there's a lot more that's going to be coming out. And I guarantee you there will be some responses from some of the drivers at 2311. You're probably going to see questions asked by the media to people like Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, Riley Herbst, even though they're not involved in it. And I guarantee you probably see someone from NASCAR probably speak about this as well. The court date, of course, is in December, and a lot of the stuff apparently will be put in. So the countersuit's probably going to be going on around the same time as the main lawsuit. So we're probably going to be dealing with lawsuits not just through 2025, but this lawsuit could be going all the way through 2026. I know Judge Kenneth Bell wants to wrap up the whole entire lawsuit at this point by next year, by the end of this year. But I think there's a very good chance of possibility that this is going to extend the lawsuit, and it's going to take a lot longer to get the lawsuit done than we all had originally prophesized at this point. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. Who do you side with in regards to the 2011 front row NASCAR lawsuit? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Austin not being suspended at Phoenix? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We got a lot of great content dropping this weekend. Of course, tomorrow we're going to have reactions to Cup qualifying, probably reactions to Xfinity qualifying, perhaps. And we are going to have reactions, of course, to the Xfinity Series race from Phoenix. Then we're also, of course, going to have reactions to the Cup race on Sunday at Phoenix. And then starting live in the Monday, we should have a NASCAR news video discussing news over the course of the last couple of days. And probably will do the entry list for the Cup race, the Pennzoil 400. And also, we should be doing reactions and race picks for the truck race. We got content coming out. People like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gibbs, Bergen Collards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Spire Motorsports, a lawsuit, Michael Jordan, Red Bull, Connor Zilisch, Shane Van Gibbs, Bergen, all the Cletus Farm, Matt Benedetto, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Chandler Smith, Eric Almirola, all the good stuff we'll be talking about on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.